Star Wars The Acolyte just wrapped up its first season, though given the show's perception, I don't know if the show is going to get a second season. Who knows the fate of the show, but the point is, the show just wrapped up its first season, so let's review. The Acolyte is about two twin sisters, Ocean and May, who are very strong with the Force. May goes down a dark path and is taking out former Jedis. Osha teams up with her old master Soul to figure out why she's doing this and investigate why she's taking out Jedis. But the show also unravels a mystery that pertains to Osha and May's past. Now, Disney Plus has had a spotty track record when it comes to Star Wars shows for Disney Plus. I mean, The Mandalorian, I like the first two seasons. The third season was Boba Fett, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, I like the season finale, but everything leading up to it was Andor is objectively a good show, but I just found the show to be boring at times. I did not watch The Bad Batch past the first episode, and I do like Tales of the Jedi, but I have not watched Tales from the Empire yet. So with this new show, The Acolyte, which was announced a couple years ago, I was slightly curious because it's like, one was The Acolyte, and then I heard that the show is going to take place like 100 years before the events of Phantom Menace. It's going into the older days of the Jedi and the High Republic. A time period that has not been explored yet in movie or TV form yet within Star Wars, so I was kind of curious. But then, of course, all these Star Wars shows have been getting a lot of hate for its quote-unquote woke-isms. And this show is the biggest offender of that because everybody's complaining about how this show is an emphasis on female empowerment. There's lesbian space witches. And as the show was going on, this show just received a lot of hate, both for rational reasons and irrational reasons. But everyone pretty much agrees that this is probably the worst of the Star Wars shows, and it is not particularly well written. And I do echo those sentiments, not the lesbian witches part. I don't think the show just having an emphasis on women has nothing to do with the quality of the show. The show is just written bad, in my opinion. That being said, I do think that there was some elements within the show that I thought, had the show been in better hands, maybe the show could have been better, but this is the show we got. The show's creator is Leslie Headland, which everybody made a big deal about because she is a gay person herself, and she used to be Harvey Weinstein's former assistant. Make of that what you will. I'm not letting that cloud my judgment of the show. The elements of the show that I really did enjoy was basically how this show pretty much shows how the Jedi are basically responsible for their own downfall. Like, this show really hones in how the Jedi, just this whole idea of bottling in their emotions and not letting them cloud their judgment is not particularly healthy, and we see how that has played decades before into the downfall of the Jedi. Even the senator dude on this show, he even points it out, like, he has very concerns and he thinks that when, not if, that one of the Jedi within the Jedi Council is going to go ape shit and pretty much destroy everything, as we would see later with Anakin Skywalker. And like I said, this show takes place back and forth between the past and the present. We go to the past with Ocean and May when they're two little girls, and apparently they were created by the Force and they're raised by these lesbian witches. But then the Jedi that is looking for this convergence within the Force, they just screw everything up, particularly Soul, who basically has a desire to have a Padawan learner, and he finds one at Osha, and then he lets his emotions get the best of him, and then bad things happen, and that's how we get the show. And so basically the show is dealing with the trauma that those two little girls took on from that experience, and the Jedi basically paying for what happened. And let's be real, characters are dying left and right, particularly the Jedi. I mean, Carrie-Anne Moss, first episode, she gets killed. And I guess the other thing I like about this show is that it's essentially a police procedural, except instead of cops, we have Jedi, and you just see different Jedis investigating, like, who is killing all the Jedi. Now, there's Osha and May, both played by Amanda Steinberg. Forgive me if I butcher her name. But Osha, she's the one that wants to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi, and then May, she refuses to let Osha go and become a Jedi, and she's basically the more standoffish one. And then May, she comes back and she turns out she's the one that's going around killing Jedi. I do think the camera work that went into Amanda Steinberg playing both of these characters was excellent. May was probably the one that is up to be the big villain, but At the same time, she does a complete 180 at the end. And turns out it's Osha, the one that basically turns to the dark side of the Force. I'll get into that in a minute. But let's get into more of the characters. You got Soul, played by Homeboy from Squid Game. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but he's probably the best character on the show and probably the best actor on the show, even if he's still learning how to speak English. He learned how to speak English, particularly for this role, and he was very excited because Qui-Gon Jinn is one of his favorite Jedis, and he kind of took inspiration for this character. Now, Carrie-Anne Moss, or as I like to call her, Jedi Trinity, she was in a lot more of it than I thought because, like I said, she gets killed the first episode, but then we go back to the past and see what part she has to play in this, and she's the more by-the-book Jedi, but then you're kind of like, yeah, I'm on her side. Y'all did kind of screw this up. It's probably the first Wookiee Jedi that we see here, and I wish we could have seen more of that vicious side of this Wookiee. I'm blanking on his name, but, you know, Torben, the Padawan that basically screwed things up for the Jedi because he still has that childlike mindset. He just wanted to get off the planet. He wanted to go home, and he thought discovering the conversions would get them home, but then things go horribly wrong. So I did like that aspect, even if in the future he takes a vow of silence and kills himself. So it's like, what was the point of this character? But still tragic nonetheless. You got Queen from Queen and Slim. I am more than happy that this actress is getting work, much less on a Star Wars show, and she was awesome on the show. But that being said, it's just sad that this show is just not as good as she probably thought it was, because she seemed very enthusiastic at that convention, that Star Wars convention that she was at when she was promoting the show. You know, when she was like, yes! I forgot this guy's name, but spoiler alert, he also gets killed, and so it's like, what's the point of this character? And by the way, for all y'all nerds out there that is complaining, talking about he messed up on who blew up the Death Star, I got one thing to say to that. This. And that's all I got to say. It's not that big a deal. Come on, y'all, calm down. We don't know what it was like for him to be put on the spot at the last minute and he has to pull Star Wars information out of his ass and then he ends up saying the wrong bit of information. Daphne King, again, I'm also happy she's getting more work after Logan, but she's also someone that gets killed. Spoiler alert, so it's like, it was hard for me to connect with this character. Green Ball Lady, she really wasn't that important until the very end because we come to find out that she's the former Jedi Master of Sith Without a Name, or Smilo Ren as everybody is calling him, and he did have some cool moments here and there, but he's just not as menacing as, like, let's say Darth Vader, Palpatine, or even Kylo Ren. In the end, this show was a mixed bag for me. I did enjoy the finale. I did like the twist of the finale in which Osha, she's the one that ends up turning to the dark side, and May, she loses her memory and then turns herself in. Osha force chokes Soul, her former master. I thought that was a bit heartbreaking. We get an appearance from Darth Plagueis, just literally a blink and you'll miss type cameo. I hope they follow up on that on the second season if we get it. And speaking of following up with things, Yoda appears at the end of this end of the finale. Why? Don't know. And the fact that he probably knew about all this years prior to the Phantom Menace, so the Sith has always been around and he basically just lied, so it just kind of makes the Sith look even more like dumbasses. The finale sets up things that I'm curious to see how they pretty much follow up with that, but at the same time, for some reason, I just don't care. Like, this show was just made poorly, it was written poorly, acted poorly at times, the dialogue was not good. I'm sure these actors had high hopes for this show because it's Star Wars, but it just turns out more of the same Disney Star Wars BS. Clearly, this is the worst of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows, but at the same time, I still see potential, but if we don't get a season 2, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. For right now, I'm going to give the Acolyte Season 1 the thumbs down emoji. Didn't hate it, but at the same time, I didn't quite like it. But if you want to see better things that these actors have been in, if you want to see Amanda Steinberg put on a good performance, watch The Hate You Give. Obviously, watch The Matrix because it has Carrie-Anne Moss in it, Squid Game, Soul, or go watch Queen and Slim, which has the head witch lady mother in that movie. All those movies that I just mentioned would be a better use of your time than sit and watch 8 hours of this shit right here.